Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to the CAD platform. My name is Kavita. This is my sign name. I am thrilled to have April and Z here with us today for our platform. Our platform is called Brown, Deaf, and Transgender, a family's journey through race, culture, and transgender identity. I'm very thrilled to have both of you here with us today. Before we proceed, first is to watch their journey and their experience, and then we will have a break, and we will show a brief commercial for the next 2 weeks, and then you will have an opportunity to do a Q&A. If you want to sign your Q&A, please let our moderators know on YouTube or Facebook for you to come up on Zoom and sign your question directly. If you do not want to be put on the spotlight and sign your question, you can simply just type your question. And our moderators will give us the question and we will sign them for you. Okay? All right. Okay, April and Z, it's great to see you guys again. We're really thrilled to have you here with us. Us too. Thank you. Hello, I'm Z. I'm transgender. I just came out in 2019. Growing up, I always knew that I wanted to become a boy. I never really knew what my identity was for so long. I always kind of dressed like a boy. It was very tomboy. I was around people and that loved me, and I was always confident in my identity, but I never really knew what transgender was. I never really had an idea of it until puberty hit, of course, and that hit me, and I was able to see the different sexes, male and female, and of course that was a frustrating experience for me going into middle school and high school and starting to see what my identity was, and that was a difficult journey for me, but I continued looking like a tomboy, but of course, yes, I was bullied for that. Oftentimes people mistake me as a lesbian, but I still felt, I'm just Z. But, expressing what I look like to people and what my identity is, I still didn't know at the time. So I got into high school, and that was a hard decision for me with my identity because middle school was difficult for me. So I wanted to start fresh, and I went ahead and tried to dress like a girl and try to identify as a woman. So I dressed girly. I tried to get myself involved into what girls usually do. And I got a taste of that for 2 years, and it didn't make me happy at all. So I gave up, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my identity. And I accepted who I was. I lost my passion in filming. That was my passion. And who I used to be, that passion was kind of gone because of the struggle of my identity. Until senior year, there was a guy, his name is Blake. He is transgender and non-binary. He came to my school and presented about their experience and their high school experience. And the first word I said when he mentioned his experience was, "Oh," it clicked. Okay, that's who I am. I told my mom, When class was finished, I got in the bus. I got home and I was so excited. Even though I was scared, I was wondering what would my family think of me, you know? We never really discussed that topic and I threw it out there. My mom already knew. So I understand myself and it gave me a chance to dissect who I was. And then I started the transition process. I didn't come out to my family. I did come out to my family, but again, it's a lot better than what it used to be. Until I graduated high school, I cut my hair. I started tea. I started to be my full self till today. I just got top surgery in August, and I'm very happy. And I've really enjoyed my experience with tea as a transgender person, and I'm super excited to share my experience with you all.
Hi, my name is April, and today I'm actually going to talk and I'm not going to sign. I'm mom, and it's interesting listening to Z share his experience because it sounds very easy, but it's definitely been a journey. And we've been so fortunate to have so much support from not only from our own family and friends, but also from the community at large. And it's really interesting the journey that we've taken with the deafness first and then into the transgender identity. Z was identified as being profoundly deaf when he was 2 years old. And so we were late kind of learning who Z was as far as that goes. And once we realized that Z was deaf, it became this mad rush to learn language and to even understand what language meant and what it looked like, and to provide Z with everything that we possibly could, and just kind of follow his lead. So we did speech therapy, we did hearing aids, and of course, American Sign Language. We were so fortunate to be completely and fully embraced by the deaf community in Los Angeles. I credit them so much with the way that they surrounded our family and really set the example of what it means to be a successful, just amazing, incredible deaf being in this country. And so that really set the expectations that we had for Z in life. We saw all the possibilities. There was no limitations for this kid. And we kind of have always followed along that path. Um, I I also think that the the intersection of the deafness and the transgender identity, it just was very seamless. When we started learning American Sign Language and when we started using it as a family, and Z was able to really express himself and really truly be himself, around the age of between the age of 2 and 3 is when we finally got to see, oh, who this kid is. And we really saw the personality come out. And the personality that was coming out was very confident, very strong willed, and extremely stubborn. And I have very strong memories of Z knowing exactly how he wanted to dress as a toddler. So I can remember if the shirt had the puffy sleeves that girl shirts tend to have, or the cute ruffly collar, he would no like rip the shirt off, would run and go grab his regular t-shirt. For the most part, he wanted to dress like dad. And we just let him be because at that time, of course, we're not just figuring out, how to raise a deaf child. We are also learning a language, and we are also adopting, I should say, adopting a new culture into our family as well. So there was a lot of things going on, and the lesson that I learned from so many other parents, especially hearing parents who are raising their deaf children, was to just follow their lead. Follow their lead. I had so many amazing examples of hearing parents who had older deaf children, and that they just really drove that home is follow your child's lead. And so, really, a part of that was allowing Z to be who he is. And that meant dressing however he wanted to dress, naming himself, giving himself the sign name, which was just a Z, and really just letting him do his thing. So it's looking back now, I feel as though everything kind of really fell into place for us.
I'd like to add about my experience and my journey in college. That was a big difference from grade school. College is when I really started my own life, adulthood, and that journey. I remember in middle school and high school, I did know my deaf identity and I believed strongly in that identity, but I did not know my transgender identity. I knew my race, because I know my family, but to truly identify as a deaf person and as a transgender person, I did not know much about that until I went to college. I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, and it was a huge eye opener for me. I saw a lot of trans people there. I met deaf trans people, also meeting people who were my race, half Asian, half Indian, and I saw myself there and I started to accept my identity even more. And I felt proud of who I am than before. I felt more confident in myself. I can't imagine if I didn't go to RIT, would I even know what I want now? So I'm very thankful that I was able to see my identity as an Indian, Asian, Black person, transgender, deaf person. College, of course, wasn't easy, especially being transgender, because I'm transitioning and I'm also transitioning into college. So it was a big experience for me and a huge journey. I did face several incidents in college, so it was very difficult for me as a trans person and how people look at me. They look at me as a trans person than what I want to be as a person. Basically, they're like, oh, well, you want to be a man, so you got to man up and you need to act this way, or you need to follow male society. So it was really hard for me to identify that and be that way, because I'm my own person. I am trans, yes, but they're trying to put me into labels and make me follow a certain way of life. And I'm telling them my identity is he, him, and then they're saying they, them. So, me as a trans person, I mean, everything deaf, trans, and a black person, it was a lot for me going through college, the identity impact, especially Black Lives Matter. That was huge for me, a huge impact on who I am as a person. I'm deaf, I'm black, I'm trans. Black Lives Matter was huge and it tore me up, seeing all of my people being hurt. And I'm 3 in 1. There has been so much that has gone on this year. I became an adult. I'm trans. I have fully identified as those things. And, I've experienced a lot of growth. And it's really wonderful to see that for myself.
And I think in regards to Black Lives Matter, one of the other aspects of our lives that I attribute to Z's success and just our own family success is the fact that we are a multicultural family. My husband is of Indian descent. He was born in England. He grew up in Georgia. And his family is, living overseas. And then I am African American. I was raised to be a very proud, strong Black woman, and I know my history, and our family is very much passionate about culture and race in America. And I have always taken the experiences that my parents went through, my grandparents went through, all the different stories that have been passed along through our family. I've taken all those bits and pieces of resilience and how to navigate life in America as a person of color. I've taken all of that and really transferred it to all of our children, but I can certainly see how it plays out for Z. And it is being able to walk into a room where you might be the only one and being able to have, to stand up tall, shoulders back, and be confident in who you are. And that's what I want all of my children to be able to do. And that's what you have to do as a person of color in this country. And we see that now more than ever, that these things are so important. And I think that when you are raising a deaf child or you're raising a transgender child, we get caught up in just that one tiny bit of their life. And we need to look at the whole picture because, like Z said, this year was really honestly traumatic for all of us. And inside of our home, there was just so much emotion because we're watching what's going on in our country. And I'm realizing that here we have a Black, deaf, transgender child. What is the world going to look like for him? What is this country going to look like for him? And it was absolutely terrifying, without a doubt. Without a doubt, this year has been a roller coaster of emotion. And it really drove home more than ever before the importance of raising a whole child, of not just solely focusing on the deafness or on their gender or on any other part of one singular part of them, but really embracing the child as a whole human being and helping them to navigate their way through this life because it's not easy. And we are made up of so many little bits and pieces. That's what makes us who we are. And so I'm really passionate about encouraging other parents to do the same, to really tap into their own culture, their family history, the history of their ancestors. All of that information and history and knowledge is there for us to use. So yeah, this has been quite 2020 especially has been very eye-opening for all of us as a family, and it's really kind of confirmed the way that we are raising our children as whole children.
Yes, 2020 has really been an eye opener. It's really been in a bad year, but in the same time, a blessed year as well. I've learned so much about what I've been going through and everything, the BLM and everything. It's been such an eye opener for not just for myself, but learning a lot also about how to have enough time for myself, to have enough time for school, to be able to really learn what it's like to have enough time for school as well. RIT, wow, that was an eye opener itself too, because here I was alone away from my family, 3,000 miles away, and navigating through that, traveling across country, and when will I get home? So really appreciating the time I was at home as well, appreciating my parents, my family, my grandparents as well, really keeping connection with the family and building that relationship much better than I had that relationship before, and really learning how to love myself as well. So this year, 2020, has, I guess, it's been a good year, I think.
Yes, 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 absolutely. I'm going to agree. It has been a year, I mean, just unlike any other. And I am absolutely thankful for everything that we've experienced so far, the good and the bad, because we've learned so much about ourselves, about our family, about the world that we live in. And I do feel like this experience has made my own children much more resilient and just really opened their eyes. We live in a very comfortable, safe, friendly community. We're very fortunate in many, many ways. And it's been good for them to be more aware of who they are and the world that they live in. That's been incredible.
Yes, I think so. You know, when BLM started happening, you know, I guess my whole body went into kind of a shock. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, look, all of this and all the adults around me and all the people that I meet at college, people at work, what's going on in my own life, that here I was going to leave my family and be alone. And I was a little bit scared, yes. But I think that really I thought I would be able to take the opportunity to learn about life itself, to learn on my terms, to be a part of different groups and different organizations, and really feel as if this year was the right time to do this. It was the right time. You know, being youth and deaf and transgender and black, all of these things, learning and taking the opportunity to learn so much of life and really seizing the moment. And so I think it wasn't a perfect year. There were some negatives in this year. There were a lot of challenges to be met as well, and more in the future to come. But really changing everything. And I hope that we can. I hope that we can make a new beginning for all of us.
And also, what I've seen happen because we are all kind of stuck and sitting in one place and we're at home and we're really having to kind of deal with our own lives, we are seeing more and more children kind of starting to discover or at least start to look into their gender and their identity and their sexuality, and that's a beautiful thing. And I have been really fortunate to connect with other parents from all over who have reached out to me and said, hey, you know, my child just also came out as transgender, or I think my child may be transgender. And it's really given all of us an opportunity to just kind of stop and really look at these things and what can we do to support our children and ourselves. And something that I would really love to see going forward is I would like to see all of these different organizations that are out there supporting, for instance, CAD. We're supporting deaf in California, and there are many wonderful family organizations like California Hands and Voices, which supports families with deaf children in California. And then we have awesome transgender organizations, Rainbow Families, and the Gender Spectrum. So we've got all these pockets of support out there for us, but very few of these organizations are really meeting the needs of families like ours. And I think that 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement kind of woke up everyone to recognize that within the deaf community, within the transgender community, within every community, we have people of color who also are dealing with other very major life altering events and just trauma and anxiety. And that as a person of color, whether you are deaf, transgender, whether you have a child with autism, what have you, we are we're still trying to navigate these other aspects of life. And I don't think that any of the support organizations that are out there in our country have really succeeded yet in meeting the needs of the whole person. And that's something that I would really love to see change. We have groups out there that excel and are awesome at helping, families navigate their way through, raising a deaf child, but it ends there. So what happens when that deaf child now decides that they are gay, or that they are lesbian, or that they're transgender or non-binary? Then what? Then where do these families go? Who do they talk to? And I can tell you from my own experience that the journey is very similar, because I kind of found myself going back to where I was when we first learned that Z was deaf. It was like, oh my goodness, I need to do my research. I need to read books. I need to meet other parents that are raising children like this. I also want to meet adults who are, have this experience in life. It's the same thing that I went through. And so the journeys are very similar, but we have yet to find that crossing of support, or that intersectionality of support. And I would love to see that change. And I think that California as a state could really lead the way with that. We have everything that we need here. We have amazing support for deaf adults, for families, for children, for the LGBTQ community. We've got everything that we need, but we need to start working together so that we do not have anyone out there who feels that they have to suppress any one part of themselves, or that they just have nowhere to turn, you know, that we have to really make those changes. And I think that our state can do that.
Yeah. I think I would add that when I recently joined the Deaf Queer Center, that's in San Francisco, and it was like the first transgender group that I was there, Drag O, and I had been there for several years and joined that group, and I was starting to really build a team of deaf LGBT plus youth getting together. I think there were just 4 or 5 of us, and we were hoping to start something more that youth would be attracted to coming and getting involved with, other transgender, other LGBTQ. And so we wanted to be able to meet and support each other and really have a lot more things than just that. We wanted to almost operate like a teams, such support that, and really be available to all youth who were transgender, but be able to be open so that we're not alone, so the kids don't feel like they're alone, so they don't know where that they can identify. Who can they look up to? How can they have someone to have an identity with? If they have someone that they know that they can see and they can meet and communicate with, they can see that connection there. And it's important that they get to be able to start when they're young and grow up with that kind of connection. In the future, I hope for this to really take off and blossom. I think for all of us in the deaf community, the transgender community, everybody, that we actually join hands and become much more of a collaborative effort.
The representation matters. I mean, nothing could be more true. I remember, I don't know if you remember, when you were invited to Sacramento, to the Capitol, to talk about the deaf film camp. And there was a deaf class, very young. I feel like they were maybe first grade, second grade
I
students,
remember.
and they came
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see Z present about the deaf film camp in New York. And this
yep,
little black girl, this little deaf black girl, ran up to Z and just like looked up to Z and did this same. And that just touched my heart so much, because yes, it matters. We need to see ourselves. We need to see ourselves everywhere. We need to see ourselves as leaders. We need to see ourselves as successful, deaf, brown, transgender people. We need that representation. It is crucial. If I could ask that any of the organizations in our state, if they make one simple change, it would be to make sure that you diversify your membership, that you diversify your boards, that you really make an effort to show the representation, because it absolutely matters. Latino families, they want to see beautiful deaf Latinos. Like, we need to see all of it. This is what our country is made of, and we've gone for far too long lacking in that representation. And for my own child to crave it and to recognize the importance of it, and then to see another child that is so young that all she could say was same, and just acknowledge and look at, just, you are the same as me, then I know that this matters. I know that this matters. And this is something that we all need to do a better job of.
I totally agree. I don't know if there's any more to add.
Hey.
There's a great big beautiful tomorrow. At the end of every day. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow. And tomorrow's just a dream away. Man has a dream, and that's the start. He follows his dream with mind and heart. When it becomes a reality, it's a dream come true for you and me.
Oh, that's
So there's a
awesome.
great
Now I get to
big
put you in a stroller and push you around.
shining at the end of every day. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow.
What a lovely day for a tea party.
Just a dream away.
When you're ready for your tomorrow to begin, start planning at DisneyWorld.com.
Wow, your story was so inspiring. And I really felt that this was so important. And I think your journey, explaining that to all of us, was so important. I do have a few questions from the audience, if you guys are ready to answer the questions.
Okay, so the first question is, I applaud you, especially April, because you show your open love and support to Z. As a parent, did you face any challenges when Z was going through his identity phase as transgender?
I would say probably the biggest challenge was the speed at which Z wanted to begin the transition. I can say for sure that I always knew that Z was transgender, even at about the age of 2 or 3, for sure. Started to kind of figure that out, even without fully understanding what that meant. But once Z came, as they say, came into himself, and really kind of recognized who he was, then it was like, there's no stopping us. I'm going full force ahead. And I kind of wanted to, like, hold on a second, let's pull the brakes and, wait, but it was one thing after the other. It was, I want a binder, I cutting my hair, I want to start testosterone shots. And it was literally within a matter of months. Everything was moving very fast. One of the most terrifying things for me as mom, for sure, is the fact that Z immediately started to use the men's public bathroom. For me as a parent, that is the most terrifying thing, and it still is. It still is. When I think about Z, traveling, or even, going back to school in New York, and I think about, you're out in public and you're going to go into a men's bathroom, and that absolutely scares me. But there was no stopping him. So once the decision was made, or rather, I shouldn't say that. I should say once Z came into himself and really fully was ready to embrace himself, there was just no stopping him. And I kind of was back to, oh my goodness, I'm going to follow my child's lead. I'm going to be chasing after him and going along for the ride. So that was for me personally, the biggest challenge.
Yep, and that's called unconditional love. That's mom right there. Unconditional love. Let your child be who they are and develop their own person, right, mom? Yes. Okay, so question number 2. What is your advice for other parents who have a child like Z?
It's really the same. It would be.
I'm not a parent.
It would be really, again, following your child's lead. I think the first step that we have as parents, whether it be, especially if you are a hearing parent and it's the deafness, or if you have any child that is unique from who you are, I should put it that way. It could be anything about this child that makes them unique and different from you. The first step is accepting that. Is really just, okay, I just accept this child for who they are. They are not like me. And I may have had ideas and preconceptions and dreams even of who they were going to be, when I was carrying that child. But here they are, and they are here to live a different life. And once you take that first step, it gets easier, because then your job as a parent is to, what can I do to help this child navigate their way through this world? And one of my great mentors that I have in the transgender community, Sarah Kaplan, she is a mother herself of 2 transgender children. And she always says that we as parents, our job is just to clear the way, You're just in front of them, clearing the way so that they can just be who they are and navigate their way through life. And it is so true. It is really true. Step 1, accept who they are. And then step 2, do what you can as a parent to really support them and help them navigate through life as who they are.
Okay, so you mentioned mentorship, and that's important to have. But my question for you is there enough mentors out there for parents like you going through all of the challenges and triumphs? Do you feel like there should be a mentorship program set up for parents of transgender youth?
I do. Well, I think what I was saying before is, I feel that in all of the organizations, whether it be CAD or Hands and Voices or Deaf Education and Family Project, whatever phenomenal organization is out there that is already doing the work of supporting, we need to add in the additional support for parents and for children. that are in the LGBTQ community. We just don't have it. And I absolutely feel that we have that need. I'm really happy that Z is now connected with the deaf queer community, but there's nothing for parents that I've come across for deaf LGBTQ. So I don't see any, and I know that there are other parents like myself, whether it be deaf parents or hearing parents, what have you. We are out there in need of support, that additional support. And I am an absolute hardcore believer in parent to parent support. It has been my saving grace throughout every aspect of my journey. So I had it all the way through the journey with Z's deafness. And the moment that Z identified as transgender, the first thing I did was try to find other parents raising transgender children. And thankfully, I've been able to do that. And I turn to them in the exact same way that I've turned to parents who are raising deaf children. It's the same, it is crucial. So, yes, we need it. And I would love to see that incorporated in our other organizations here in the state.
I agree with you. Maybe you could work with several organizations to establish a program like that. That's something to definitely think about. I think that it would be wonderful if those organizations could work with us as CAD and how we can help our deaf transgender youth and help them become successful. I feel like in California we need an establishment like that. Okay, question number 3. This is a question for Z. What is your advice for our youth who goes through the same journey as you went through? What is your advice for them, for transgender youth? My advice would be patient. That is a huge key to this. It doesn't mean hold your identity inside. What I mean is when you start your identity issue, don't expect for it to be sudden. And for that instant gratification, you definitely will always be learning about yourself, and just give yourself time to develop your identity and become confident in yourself. Because back then I thought that it would be easy and I was confident, okay, I'm trans. And then I got into college and I was like, oh, wow, this is a different experience than I thought it was going to be. Just be patient. Take it step by step, baby steps. That's a huge suggestion from me. If you don't know what to do, and if you don't feel comfortable about your identity or sharing it with people, I suggest you meet new people, hearing or deaf, transgender people. I've met a lot of hearing people, also deaf transgender people on Instagram, and they have a huge platform with a huge transgender community. And I've been meeting these people, and I've been gaining experiences from people that are far into the journey or people who are just starting. And I think it's wonderful to have those very unique conversations with people that are just like me. I want transgender friends, and it's possible I can have that. So there's a huge plus there to have transgender friends. But in my journey, a big thing for me was patience. You know, it's a flow of things. You can't expect different things. You'll get there one day. Yes, definitely. Our youth needs you, Z. You are a wonderful role model for our youth. Hats off to you, Z. Truly. I encourage you guys to follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is becoming underscore dash Z. If you look at my Instagram, I have different posts on there, different educational posts. I'm always here for you. I'm always here to listen. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm here for you. This is Kavita speaking. Definitely, I'm sure that they will reach out to either of you. Both of you are a wonderful role model and resource for the transgender and LGBTQIA plus community as a whole. Okay, question number 4. What are some ways that schools for the deaf can reinforce oppression of brown transgender students? And what are some actions that administrators and also teachers can make to ensure that deaf students receive more equitable education and also students of color?
Oh, I would say I implore the deaf schools, and this is for any school, is to start teaching more than just deaf history. And if you're teaching American history, if you're a mainstream school, go beyond the basic American history. The deaf schools are very proud of the deaf identity, and that is a wonderful thing. And it is, you're instilling a sense of identity, a sense of self, a sense of pride, culture, community. I understand that. But absolutely, brown, children of color who are deaf are missing out on an important aspect of who they are. It goes back to educating a whole child. And I would love to see the deaf schools really go even further when it comes to teaching history, go beyond the deaf history, bring in Black history, and I mean like real Black history, because the Black leaders that we know in our history books, right? The things that they have accomplished were not just for Black people. The doors that were opened by the civil rights movement were opened for women. They were open for the LGBT community. They were open for immigrants. They were open for people of color. I mean, what the civil rights movement did in this country was to really try and equalize this country for everyone. And we don't recognize that enough, and we don't acknowledge that enough. And if brown, deaf, LGBT students can see themselves and have a sense of pride, not only in their deafness, but also in their culture, oh my goodness. I mean, that in itself is going to encourage them to do better in school. It's going to inspire them to be more successful. They need to know that not only are they a part of the deaf community, but they are part of a rich, vibrant Black community as well, or a Latino community, or an Asian community. We need to go beyond deaf history. We have got to start teaching all of the students on campus about all of the cultures and really um, highlighting every aspect of the culture, not just the deafness. I really am just, I would love to see that. And I think that that would make a huge difference for children of color on in deaf schools. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with
you.
you, Mom. Yes, in that time when I went to RIT, I felt that there wasn't enough resources as a brown, Asian, Black, deaf person, transgender person. When other people would explain their culture, okay, that's fine. But me as a deaf, transgender person, where is the trans history? Where is the Black, Asian, Indian history? You know, I was always kind of cut off from my culture in education, you know, but where do I see my identity? Where do I meet a person that is just like me or somebody that I could look up to? I didn't really have a role model to look up to. I kind of looked up to myself, and now kids are looking up to me, and I'm glad that I can give them a role model to look up to, you know, but we're very fortunate. Black Lives Matter is happening. People are starting to open their eyes, and we are building um, more organizations, and I want to see this continue. You know, I feel like this is the envision for the future, and the envision is change. At RIT, there was so many resources for me as a person, and it really values diversity and inclusion, but I wish that the deaf schools could provide more of that. I want all students to feel safe at deaf schools. I went to a deaf school and I didn't feel safe. Yeah, my deaf identity was there, but my true identity, I didn't feel safe. I felt singular in a class of many. You know, I was only the only brown person in my class. There's no safety net there. I want to feel comfortable in school. I finally felt safe in college. Could you imagine that? I never felt that in grade school. You know, I had a counselor who was a black deaf person. I had a teacher who was black and deaf. You know, that was amazing for me to experience. I never had that. So again, it took time for me to build as a person. And of course, it's going to take time for the deaf schools to follow. But if they can provide more education, we need to get our administrators' attention and tell them to be more including of more of a diverse population. This is Kavita. This message is for you. I want to deliver this message to you all. Administrators, school teachers, please consider a curriculum, a full-on curriculum in your programs, not just deaf history and not just Black history, but all of it. Black history, Asian history, transgender history, LGBTQIA. Sorry, I'm spelling wrong. I'm practicing LGBTQIA plus. Please include them. It is so important for children to know their history and their culture. I hope that you are all watching this evening and you are impacted by this message. Okay, question number 5. I'm curious, since Z mentioned that there are groups for youth with Drago, is there any group for parents of youth so we can learn more? No, I don't think so. But that's definitely a great idea for something for my mom to participate into, for parents and their children to have more of a collaborative experience. Definitely. My mom can become your mentor now.
But that's true. I mean, it's I exactly what this question is asking. There isn't anything for parents of LGBTQ youth who are also deaf. And I don't see it anywhere. I would love to see it. And when it happens, however, it needs to also have the representation of culture and race. It can't just be another group that, okay, now we're going to implement the LGBTQ into our organization. We also need to make sure that there is representation of Black and Brown people, of Asian people. Like, we need to, if we're going to do it, let's just go all the way from the start. Because I think if Z and I can drive home any message, it's that there are wonderful resources out there for all of us to tap into, but it doesn't hit home. It doesn't really give you that what you need until you see your own representation there. Like Z just mentioned his experience going to college, and I can remember him texting me and calling me like, "Oh my gosh, my counselor is a Black deaf woman." And oh my gosh, I have there was such excitement. And again, this absolutely matters. So no, we don't have any support for parents at this time that I am personally aware of that would support deaf transgender youth. There are organizations, of course, that support mainstream families. And I have infiltrated those organizations, and I can tell you that they were not ready. That they definitely, once again, Z was the only one. And yeah.
Really?
And so, but the willingness to welcome us is absolutely there, 100%. But we definitely had an incident where Z joined an online, it was for Black transgender youth, and they were doing an online group And I was so excited. I encouraged Z, like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is for you. It's other Black transgender youth, teenagers and young adults. And Z went, and it's online, so it couldn't get any easier. They asked if there was any accessibility that was needed, and Z filled out the form and arrives online, and they were not ready. They were not prepared. They did not have an interpreter. They did not have captions, and they didn't have the attitude, I guess, of like willingness to make sure that Z was included. And Z is 19, soon to be 20, literally in a couple of weeks. But as a mother, I sat with it for a second. I said to myself, do I want to get involved? Like I usually do. I don't want to fight Z's battles because Z's very self-resilient and very independent. But I could not let that one go. And I definitely reached out to many people within the organization. And what I said to them was, where does my child fit? Where does my child fit? My child, he's Black, he's transgender, and he's also deaf. So where exactly is he supposed to go to find support? And they did a wonderful job of communicating back with me, and they made an absolutely beautiful effort to right their wrongs. They provided interpreters going forward. They apologized. But it was an eye-opening experience for them, and it is because we have yet to make sure that all of these organizations are fully supporting the needs that are out there.
This is Kavita speaking. You know what? Here at CAD, we have a youth director. Maybe you can work with the youth director. His name is Alex Bravo. I think it would be a wonderful experience of Z saying, yeah, we went to the same school. I know who he is. So that's a huge suggestion. And also, I think that it would be wonderful for you to host a workshop next week working with Drago. We have already been in contact and he's super interested, and maybe you can be involved in that workshop for next spring. So he's saying, yeah, sure. So something to think about, please. Thrilled. Okay, so question number 6. As a white deaf professor who trains future teachers of the deaf, what are things that we should be incorporating in our courses that would affirm Black, deaf, trans students of all ages?
I mean, I always go back to history. I always turn to history. I'm a history geek. I love history, and I feel like there's just so much there that we can tap into and pull from. And so any kind of history lesson, that Marsha P. Johnson, there are Black transgender leaders in history who accomplished a lot, but it's also taking it back further once again to the civil rights movement and really what was that about? What did that look like? And how that affects us today. That would be my suggestion. I don't know.
Yeah, relating to Marsha, the Black trans woman, there were multiple Black trans women in history who started the movement for all of the rights that we have now. So it's really wonderful to start there and look at their experience and looking at their identity as a Black trans person. I think it's wonderful to see that and also focus on their history. And that's a great start. There have been movies coming out about Black trans people, and there is a lot more recognition for Black trans people in the community. So it's a lot of discussion going on currently. And I think that it would be wonderful for you to actually meet a person who identifies as a Black trans person and have the discussion there for you to be more educated and, of course, have more of a comfortable discussion so you are more educated in the future.
But I also want to add that I feel that it's important that when we start making these changes in education, that we make sure that simultaneously we do have the support for parents. So hopefully there is a parent in that school who can connect to the other parent, because what's happening in the classroom certainly is going to be talked about in the home. And so we need to make sure that parents have a place to turn to as well, that they have the support that they need at the same time that their child is being exposed to this history and to this thing. Because without that, they just go hand in hand. We have to have both. We have to have both. So it's really important that I would love it if Cal Ed, if the deaf educators got together and they talked about, adding this curriculum to deaf education, but at the same time, if they worked closely with a parent support group like Hands and Voices and said, okay, now do you guys have the parent part of that so that we can refer families to you, and so that as we are working on these changes, parents and families also have a place to turn to as well.
Yeah, and also kids too, because I think it's wonderful to hear what kids want and their envision and what they want to learn, so I think it's wonderful to have parent connection and student connection and for all of us to build together. And the main goal of all of this is to provide good education. This is Kavita speaking. I agree 100%. We need to have a collaborative effort for this. We can't just have 2 or 3 organizations supporting this. We need multiple organizations, including parent organizations, involved in this movement and making sure that they are inclusive. That is so vital for the future of our children. They need people to look up to. Our youth leaders such as Z and Alexis Bravo, just wonderful leaders out there.
And it also, I just want to add one last thing too, for any of the teachers who are out there listening. It's also having educators who are willing to really meet the child also where they're at, because something that I am so appreciative of, Z's preschool teachers at Burbank at the Washington Elementary, the Tripod program, I will never forget her preschool teachers, Patty Ivankovic and Wendy Weevil. Z did a self, when you draw yourself. Yes.
Yes, I know who they are. Yes.
when you're 3 or 4 years old and they have you do your self-portrait, Z would draw a boy. Z drew a boy. And I remember being in our parent-teacher meetings or in our IEP meetings, and we're looking at Z's artwork, and the teachers, were showing us, well, Z's drawing, himself or herself at the time as a boy. But they never made Z feel bad about that. They never told Z that was wrong. They never there was no judgment whatsoever for Z on doing that, or even to us as the parents. It was just like, we're just showing you what Z has done here, something to put in the back of your mind. And that is so valuable. So we also need our educators to just also follow that child's lead and be a safe place for them to kind of explore their identity and their gender.
Yes, completely. We definitely need to give an applause to Wendy Wee Wee. That is so wonderful. We need more teachers like them. I hope Patty and Wee Wee are watching tonight. They deserve their recognition. And I mean, honestly, they are the reason why who you are, Z. You know, we need teachers like them. All right, so we are running out of time. Are there any more questions from the audience? I think that's it. I hope that everybody who is watching tonight bring home this discussion to your families, discuss this with your colleagues, and start the conversation about your child's future and their identity and their journey and their wish to identify as they are. I think you need to start that conversation somewhere. I want to thank Z and April and also the sponsors, Access Language Connection, for providing interpreting services. I'd like to thank them for sponsoring and providing two sign language interpreters tonight. And I also would like to thank the platform today that we're on air. Also, I would like to thank everybody who participated tonight and watched this platform. If you want us to discuss any other topics, feel free to contact us. Oh, and also there is one more thing, one more platform on December 17th, and that is it for the year. But there is more coming up in 2021. So much more exciting information to be shared. If you want to continue CAD platforms, please consider donating to our organization to keep the community informed on any topic. Thank you all for watching tonight. Have a wonderful night. Goodbye.
Thank you.